Imagine handing over 100 grand or even $1 million for your dream supercar and never getting the car. That's what customers say happened with Ant Anstead's company, Radford Motors. The brand promised handcrafted, ultra-exclusive Lotus Radford builds, but now it's being completely liquidated under Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Lawsuits are flying in, investors are calling out mismanagement, and some even claim customer deposits were diverted into everything except building the cars. So let's talk about what actually went down at Radford and how a hyped revival turned into a full-blown financial mess. Welcome to Tuna No Crust, the largest YouTube channel solely focused on car TV shows and car TV show hosts. When Radford Motors first launched, it had everything going for it. A charismatic TV host in Ant Anstead, a legendary Lotus partnership, and a pitch that sounded irresistible. This wasn't just another supercar brand. Radford promised a return to old-school coach building, personalized craftsmanship, and cars built exactly to a customer's vision. It felt exclusive, nostalgic, and honestly, pretty exciting. But behind the scenes, things were already wobbling. Customers say they were asked for massive deposits up front. Not small reservations, we're talking checks the size of houses. Some people put in $100,000. Others, over $1 million. They were shown rendering, spec sheets, and early prototypes, and they were told the cars were coming. Just give it time, just trust the process, except the cars never showed up. Instead, update after update turned into excuse after excuse. Delays, unexpected issues, new timelines that kept getting pushed back, and while customers were waiting and emailing and begging for answers, Radford's financials were quietly collapsing. According to the bankruptcy filings, the company wasn't just short on cash, it was drowning in debt. Vendors hadn't been paid, partners felt misled, and now multiple lawsuits claimed that customer deposits weren't sitting safely in production accounts. They were being used for unrelated expenses, everything from operations to travel to general business burn. And once those accusations surfaced, the whole thing unraveled fast. Partners started distancing themselves, investors started demanding answers, and customers, many of them realized they might never see their cars or their money again. So how did a company with this much hype, this much talent, and this much promise end up collapsing this hard and this publicly? That's where the story gets even messier. As the delays dragged on and the excuses piled up, the financial cracks inside Radford started turning into full-blown legal battles. Investors and partners who once championed the project were suddenly raising serious red flags about where the money was actually going. One of the biggest voices to step forward was investor Pat Velasco. He wasn't just any investor, he was a business partner of Ant Anstead and Radford's CFO, Mark Bednarski. Velasco filed a lawsuit claiming the company owed him $2 million. He said Radford leadership made repeated promises to pay him back, but those promises never went anywhere. And according to Velasco, once he started asking for financial transparency, things got strange. Records became harder to access, communication got spotty, and explanations around spending just didn't line up. Then, another co-owner, Roger N. Bale Jr., filed his own lawsuit with even more alarming details. He pointed to specific transactions that, in his view, showed company funds being misused. One example stood out when a customer sent in a $100,000 payment for their custom build. Minutes after that money hit the account, over $54,000 was sent to a vendor that had nothing to do with that customer's car. 29 minutes later, another $20,000 was transferred to the CFO. Bailey's lawsuit also accused the company of using business accounts to pay for personal auto insurance. Obviously, allegations like that don't just create tension, they set off alarm bells. Investor trust dropped fast. Inside the leadership team, people were questioning who actually controlled the finances and how decisions were being made. Lawsuits describe messy accounting, inconsistent reporting, and big expenses getting approved without clear authorization. It looked less like a coordinated operation and more like a company drifting into chaos. And while the internal battles were heating up, customers were running into the same kind of frustration. One of them, Timothy Tasker, put down a deposit of $101,000 for his Type 62-2. He got a timeline for delivery, he waited, he checked in, and he waited some more. After months of delays and very little clarity, he finally asked for a refund. Radford allegedly told him it would be processed. But according to the lawsuit he filed, months went by and nothing happened. No refund and barely any communication, just silence. By this point, both customers and investors were starting to reach the same conclusion. Something inside Radford Motors was seriously broken, and whatever was happening behind the scenes was much bigger than a few simple delays. Then came another major case. A customer named Scott Katzman, along with a dealership acting as an intermediary, reportedly paid over $1 million combined for several Radford cars. According to their lawsuit, Radford admitted there were delays and promised to set up a repayment schedule. But just like the others, No money ever arrived, no cars were delivered, and every time they asked for updates, they got vague responses or nothing at all. As more stories like this surfaced, online communities began connecting the dots. Facebook groups, car forums, and enthusiast pages were filled with people comparing notes, sharing their own concerns, and pointing out the same pattern. People started speculating that the company simply didn't have the capital to finish development or deliver the cars it had already sold. And inside Radford, things were getting even more tense. Founders and partners were reportedly arguing over money, over control, over who was responsible for what. The accusations weren't just about missed deadlines anymore. They were about deeper issues, like whether the company had the systems and management to operate at all. While Radford struggled to keep production going, suppliers wanted payment, customers demanded answers, and investors pushed for accountability. Eventually, Radford Motors filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Ant Anstead addressed the situation publicly, saying the company was going through organizational changes but was still operating. He explained that he had spent 6 months in the UK filming his series Born Mechanic, and when he returned to the United States, he continued to support Radford and its direction. He acknowledged that there were challenges with ownership, but reassured clients and partners that he was committed to the brand. Radford's CFO and COO, Daniel Bednarski, also made a statement. He confirmed the company was officially in Chapter 11 restructuring and said the purpose was to strengthen Radford for the future. He explained that some ownership changes would take place, but both he and Anstead planned to remain in their roles. According to him, the filing was not the end of Radford, but a strategic step to stabilize operations. Public statements framed the bankruptcy as a reset, a chance to reorganize, pay off certain debts, and move forward. But legal experts looking at the case pointed out a much harsher reality. The sheer number of lawsuits and the seriousness of the allegations meant that any kind of turnaround would be extremely difficult. Customers wanted to know if their deposits would be recognized under bankruptcy. Investors prepared to file as creditors. Vendors waited for overdue payments, and while leadership insisted solutions were coming, the financial records being reviewed in court suggested the company was under severe strain. Alright, quick break from the story because I want to show you something actually useful if you're into road trips, camping, overlanding, or honestly, taking off for a weekend without planning anything. This video is sponsored by Naturnest, and they hooked it up with their Polaris Light Triangle rooftop tent. And I'm going to be real with you, this thing surprised me. It's one of the slimmest rooftop tents I've ever seen. When it's closed, it only sits about 4 inches tall, so your car doesn't look like a shipping container driving around. But the best part is how fast it opens. You undo the latches, lift it, and boom, you've got a full tent in like 15 to 30 seconds. I love that because the last thing you want to do at camp is messing around in the dark while your friends are already making food. Inside, it sleeps 2 people comfortably, and they actually include an insulated premium mattress, so you're not lying on a yoga mat pretending it's comfortable. The shell is a PHC composite with aluminum alloy, which makes it lightweight but strong enough for 4-season camping. Rain, cold, wind, it's built for all that. The triangle design also gives you better wind resistance and a more stable structure compared to the old school soft shell tents. But because it's lightweight, at around 120 pounds, it works on most vehicles that have proper crossbars or a roof rack. I also like that it's super low profile when folded. That means less drag, less noise, better gas mileage, and you don't feel like you're driving a UFO. Plus, it actually looks clean on top of the car. It's a sleek black clamshell instead of just a giant blob. If you've been thinking about adding a rooftop tent for travel, filming trips, camping, or even just a mobile escape pod for the weekends, definitely check it out. I'll put the link in the description so you can see all the specs. And quick heads up, Naturnest's official website is having a Black Friday sale right now, so if you're gonna grab one, this is literally the best time. Huge thanks to Naturnest for supporting the channel. Now let's get back into the video. As the bankruptcy process continued, the situation only got worse. Cash shortages became more obvious. Radford's reputation was damaged, which meant new orders weren't coming in. Without new revenue, the company struggled to cover ongoing expenses. Quarter after quarter, the gap between what Radford owed and what it actually had kept widening. As Radford's finances continued to deteriorate, it became clear that Chapter 11 reorganization was not going to save the company. This was no longer a PR problem or a temporary cash flow issue. The numbers showed that Radford could not pay its debts, could not finish its cars, and could not continue operating even with restructuring. That reality pushed the company into the next phase, Chapter 7, bankruptcy. Chapter 7 is liquidation, not recovery. It means the business will not be reorganized or revived. Instead, a court-appointed trustee steps in, evaluates everything the company owns, and begins selling those assets to repay creditors in order of priority. For Radford, this shift signaled that the company lacked the capital, the investor support, and the internal stability to continue building vehicles. The goal was no longer to save the business. The goal was simply to settle debts. Customers who paid large deposits became unsecured creditors. Investors filed claims to recover what they could. Former partners disputed leadership decisions and spending. Court records listed the remaining equipment, intellectual property, and unfinished cars, all of which could be sold during liquidation. This conversion effectively ended Radford's ability to manufacture cars. Production stopped, orders were no longer feasible, any hope of restarting the brand disappeared as everything moved into asset distribution. The lawsuits that had been piling up remained active inside the bankruptcy process. Allegations of fund misuse, poor management, and unreturned deposits were now part of a formal legal review overseen by the liquidation trustee. Observers following the case noted that Radford's collapse followed a pattern common in small, low-volume car startups: high development costs, slow production timelines, and dependence on customer deposits to stay afloat. But Radford's situation carried an extra level of controversy. The lawsuits described the same recurring story over and over: money paid in, delays, little communication, no car delivered, internal partners arguing about financial decisions, investors alleging that production funds were redirected elsewhere. All of these pressures built up until the company simply could not continue operating. The shift to Chapter 7 was the final confirmation of that. The move from Chapter 11 reorganization to Chapter 7 liquidation marked the point of no return for Radford Motors. The plan to restructure the business, bring in new ownership, and continue building cars was over. Chapter 7 made it official that Radford did not have the money or stability to reorganize at all. This was the end of a highly publicized revival effort. Radford carried historic heritage and modern hype, but the financial strain and operational issues overwhelmed it. The company became an example of how ambitious, low-volume car startups can collapse when development costs rise, timelines slip, and capital runs out. Chapter 7 leaves only a few possible outcomes: complete closure through liquidation, a sale of remaining assets and IP to new ownership, or the intellectual property being purchased by a different company for future use. All of these outcomes now depend entirely on the bankruptcy process. For customers, refunds were no longer a promise from the company. They depended solely on what the court could distribute. For investors, any recovery depended on the value of the assets being sold. And for the founders, the shift to Chapter 7 meant the end of operational control and whatever future they had envisioned for Radford Motors. Radford Motors launched with confidence and ended in lawsuits, bankruptcy, and liquidation. Customers wait for outcomes. Investors pursue claims. The brand faces an uncertain future under Chapter 7. Do you expect the assets to return under new ownership, or does the bankruptcy close the Radford revival permanently? If you want more collapse reports, watch The Untold Truth About Royalty Exotic Car Rentals, closing down on Tuna No Crust. I'll see you crust heads on the next one.